really nasty, creepy stuff. So, and then at the end, there's a collection of shorter spells, many of which are in English. So all of the Zekabeni stuff is in Latin. And the shorter spells often end with the words probatum est, which means it works. Okay, it's proven to work. So he comes up with the spell, and then at the end he writes probatum est. And so he thinks that maybe they work, that they're authentic, these spells. And maybe he tried them out. We don't know. We don't know whether he tried them out or not. But for sure, that's what it says. It says at the end of most of these spells, this one works in Latin. And on one occasion he writes it in English. This hath been often proved. It's what he usually writes the phrase in Latin. And most of these are also love charms, intended to allow the magician to alter the attitude of the woman towards a man who desired her, persuading her to sex against her wishes. And there's no doubt that these spells were a form of witchcraft. I mean, there is doubt about whether or not he used them, but there's no doubt that they were a form of witchcraft and were illegal at the time, and the penalty for doing this kind of magic was death. So here's one particularly unpleasant example.
Date rape.
Date rape, indeed, it is exactly date rape. It's headed an experiment of love, and you're told that you should put powder of Valeria in the drink of a targeted woman without her knowledge. In modern parlance, drink is being spiked, and the active ingredient is valerian, a herb with a well-known sedative quality. And Aubrey's notebook described how a man could take advantage of a woman once she'd imbibed the drink. And this is what he said, the thing says, let her drink thereof, and afterwards talk at her, and she shall be very loving to thee. So that's terrible. It's interesting because it's sort of it's a natural magic. It's not a demonic magic. It's not harnessing the power of demons. It's using the power of herbs to sedate somebody and in a woozy state to take advantage of them. But then there's other spells that are definitely black magic. So this is perhaps the worst of them, and it's headed a charm to make your girl appear. And this is what you're advised to do. Take money obtained for drudgery from a harlot on a Sunday. So what that means is you've got to find a prostitute and get some money from her that she's received for selling sex on Sunday. And presumably the weird logic is this is really contaminated money. It's money that results from this immoral act conducted on the Lord's day. It's very, very tainted. Anyway, once you've got this money, then you've got to buy some wax and make some candles, 3 candles. And somehow or other, you've got to get some hairs from the head of the woman you desire and wrap hairs around each of the candles, writing on each candle the name of a powerful demon and the name of the woman, the name of her whom you desire. And one of the demons is Beelzebub. I can't remember offhand the other 2 demons, but they are definitely demons. Anyway, so you light each candle and they burn down, and then sure enough, if you wait long enough, the bewitched woman will be compelled to turn up at your door, it says. She will presently come to her name and knock at the door, then sign yourself with the cross and let her in. She will be of a cheerful mind and countenance. So it's really shocking stuff, and it is undoubtedly witchcraft. The question is, did he actually do? Did he dabble in this? And we can't be sure. But he's certainly taking, I think, a very unhealthy interest in what was a form of witchcraft. And I think there's a case for saying is there not just a little bit of a double standard here, that this guy who had no apparent qualms about working class women being put to death for witchcraft was himself collecting this very, very dark material, and he may himself have dabbled in illegal magic. So that rather alarming, depressing, dark finding is one of the findings of my of my book. So there we are, folks. That's it, really. It's a complicated story. He was a complicated guy, and it's difficult to know how far we should be judging people by the standards of our age. And as I've said in the first half of the talk, this was an extraordinarily talented, brilliant individual. But there's a dark side also to his story. So,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Tony, thank you very much. Tony, I'm sure people have got questions they'd like to ask you.
Sure.
But I'd like to kick off with one. You mentioned the Royal Society. So was he actually a founder member?
Yes, more or less. It's quite complicated. He wasn't there at the first meeting, but he was one of the first members of the Royal Society.
Right.
Yeah.
And the picture you showed early on
Yes.
of Stonehenge,
Yes.
that I have seen some pictures of Stonehenge which appear to make it look fairly dilapidated.
Yes.
That picture looks pretty much similar to how it looks today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know anything about that particular
No, I'm
picture?
not an expert on his Stonehenge investigations. The picture comes from his Monumenta Britannica, which was this amazing guide to the antiquities of Britain that he produced. But I'm not an expert on that. What I do know is that the experts say that this guy was really serious in terms of the accuracy of his measurements, and groundbreaking in terms of the accuracy of the way in which he did the surveying.
Many of the buildings in Calm are said to have been built from stone taken from Avebury.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, well, that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. Some questions?
The land in Wales he was hoping to inherit.
Yes.
Would that be anything to do with John Dee? Because that was his sort of vague uncle, was it? A sort of cousin brother?
There's a relationship between the great grandfather
Yes.
and John Dee. I thought they were just friends. They were friends. There was a friendly relationship there. So this great grandfather was associated with the famous, late Elizabethan, early Jacobean wizard John Dee. I don't know about the exact details in terms of the land ownership. I think there's another link with Dee. Aubrey, in Brief Lives, did a biography of Dee. He was very interested in Dee. It's sort of one of the reasons I suspect he did actually dabble in spirit magic, because Dee was a practitioner in spirit magic, and he was controversial. He said, no, I do engage in spirit magic, but all I do is contact angels. Whereas the critics said, how do you know they're angels? This is very dangerous stuff. Aubrey researched Dee, was fascinated by Dee, and was very interested in the legacy of Dee, and worked in effect on a project relating to Dee with Elias Ashmole, who's another one of these characters, fellow of the Royal Society, founder of the Ashmolean Museum, the world's first public museum, and a passionate believer in the authenticity of magic, and a huge admirer of John Dee. So some very interesting connections there.
How well did his book sell in his lifetime?
Well, he only published one in his lifetime, and it was Miscellanies, this supernatural thing, which only came out a year or so before he died.
Right.
So his writing career was a complete disaster, really. This beautiful picture was intended to be the frontispiece, I think, of Monumenta Britannica.
Mm-hmm.
So he was just about to get published, and he had this picture of himself engraved, and it didn't come out. So he was really chaotic in terms of his writing career. He wrote loads and loads of books, and the only one that got published was his book on magic. Thankfully, he was very, very careful about leaving his papers to the Ashmolean Museum, and the reason they're all in the Bodleian is because it's all part of the University of Oxford, and eventually they were transferred to the Bodleian. And he did that as a very deliberate act, because he was sort of, towards the end of his life, he knew he'd screwed up. He knew that he should have published all these things, and he hadn't. And he was very worried about his legacy and the fact that it all would be lost. So he made great efforts to give all the material either to the Ashmolean or to the Royal Society Library, and there's some material in the Royal Society Library as well.
The natural history of Wiltshire was a geological exploration,
It's kind of everything in natural history. The natural history, the phrase "unnatural history" is slightly misleading. These guys were all huge admirers of Francis Bacon, the pioneering scientist, who said that the starting point, who believed in experimentation, he said before you start experimenting, you should just gather everything curious together, and then you should start saying, is that true? Is that really true? How does that work? And that kind of compendium of weird stuff, Bacon called unnatural history. So they produced natural histories. There are other people producing natural histories at the time. So it's a kind of it's a jumble of stuff. It's got lots of geology in it, a certain amount of history. It's a sort of collection of interesting bits and pieces.
Do you think he wasn't too worried about the law? Do you think he, by writing these things about black magic, surely he was quite close to being?
I think it's really weird that I've often thought about that. I mean, this material was illegal. The penalty for witchcraft of the sort that's being described there was death, and this was really, really dark stuff then. I mean, dark to us.
Yeah.
And he knew. He obviously knew it was not respectable, because he doesn't mention this stuff in Miscellanies. Miscellanies is full of that sort of charming stuff about working out.
So it's very, very dangerous to write this down.
Yeah, it is dangerous to write it down.
Yeah.
He obviously thought that he would get away with it, and he did get away with it. And I think in terms of the double standard thing, I think this group of individuals thought that they were really above the rules that applied to the common
Treated it as research and
exactly.
Scientifically based, really. It was science.
And if you want to, I mean, there are some people who say, I'm not convinced that he actually ever did do the spells, but that he was interested as a sort of folklore researcher. Maybe, I'm not sure. You can't prove that he did or did not do any of this magic. I think there is strong evidence that other people like Elias Ashmole and probably Robert Boyle did dabble in what they thought was benign angel magic. But to your point, I think he obviously thought that he would get away with it, and that it was okay for him to leave this dark material to the Ashmolean Museum. And he was right that he thought he might get away with it. Because he did.
But that's because he died.
Well, but the other people got away with it.
But even now,
there were no cases of the.
Is it just sort of like the male folk that got away with it? I guess the women folk wouldn't have got away with it, would they?
Exactly.
And also by his position, he probably was in a better position for going forth than the common from a village.
Maybe. There are very few. I can't think of any. There are very few really elite people who were accused of witchcraft in the 17th century. The women from Malmesbury are really poor women.
Yes.
There's also a misogynism thing. I'm not disputing that. There's definitely double standards. There's a male and female.
I was interested in your question mark over double standard. It was obviously one.
Well, I agree. I agree.
About witch trouble, not wizard trouble.
No,
Could you talk a bit, if you know, about his family? So you mentioned he was from Eastern Piercy.
Yes.
How did his family live there for generations? What's the background?
Yeah, it's a complicated story. A lot of I don't know the details actually. Maybe you know, Brian. There's his mother's
was
family.
there.
He's taking his wig off.
His mother's family are connected to the Eastern PSC property, and their family name is called Light.
LYTE.
LYTE.
Yeah.
And the almshouses are called Light's almshouses.
Isaac Light.
Yeah. So there's a connection. Yeah. Well, you guys know more about it. There's a connection on the mother's side.
So this family have in some way been around for generations then?
Yeah, they claim that they went back to Norman times, and they had these Welsh connections. They also had property in South Wiltshire. So actually he divided his time until he lost everything between the two houses, the house up here and also the house near Salisbury at Broadchalk.
Oh, right.
So there's a connection there as well.
So his mother was of the light, and his father was of the dark.
Yeah, something like that. Okay, thank you. Terrible plug. If anyone's remotely interested in my book, I have got a few copies at the back available.
Which I'm sure Tony will sign for you if you're interested. But big thank you to Tony for coming along, and yeah, let's see if we can get some more of these John Aubrey evenings along, especially when we come up to his 400th birthday.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.